Well, good evening, everyone. I'm Marcia Kramer. I'm the political reporter at CBS 2. We'd like to welcome you to the fifth and last of our town hall meetings that we've been conducting all over the city during the month of June. CBS 2 and our partners WCBS News Radio 88, 1010 Wins News, El Diario La Prensa, the City University of New York, and Common Cause New York want you to know that we will be hosting several mayoral debates later in the year. These debates will air live on television and radio and be covered extensively by print, radio, and social media. And we want you to be part of the process. Sonia?
Good evening. I'm Sonia Rincon with 1010 Wins. And during these town hall meetings, we would like to know what issues concern you and what qualities you would like to see in this year's candidates for mayor, comptroller, and public advocate.
I'm Rich Lamb, City Hall reporter with WCBS News Radio 880. This could be your chance to have your question or concern raised in one of this year's political debates. So please have your questions ready when you come up to the microphone. Marlene?
I am Marlene Peralta from El Diario La Prensa newspaper. If you don't have a chance to express your concerns this evening and would like to do so after, we are happy to hear them on our respective social media sites. And you can leave written questions as well with our staff during or after this meeting. And if you have a comment you would like to make in Spanish, I'm also here to help. Si tienen algún comentario en español, también estoy aquí para asistirlos.
I'm Susan Lerner with Common Cause New York. And before we get started, we'd like to thank Wagner College for hosting tonight's discussion. We also want you to know that we'll be recording this town hall meeting and streaming it live on cbsnewyork.com. We want to make sure we can hear from as many of you as possible, and we want to set out some ground rules. First, I'd like to emphasize that we're preparing for some of the officially sanctioned debates that are part of the city's campaign finance program. And so the questions that you give us today, you may actually hear in debates that the candidates are required to attend as a condition of accepting public funding for their campaigns. And so we're going to ask you, focus on questions. We're here to hear your concerns. These are news professionals. Chances are they know the context for the issues that you're raising. If they don't, they'll ask you to clarify. But we want you to come up with the best questions that you think the news team should be asking the candidates for citywide office in the official debates that are going to take place before the November election. So if you have a question in mind, we'd like to ask you to step up right now to the microphone here in front of the stage and share it with us. Who'd like to get us started? Please, we'd like to hear from you. No, we'd like you, because for the people who are listening in at home or on the recording, they need to hear you on the microphone.
And would you also please say your name and what part of Staten Island you're from?
My name is Harold Kozak, and I'm from Great Hill, Staten Island. Okay, and I want to give you a little background before I tell you about that question, because I think what I have to say is extremely important. I've been an educator for 44 years, both at the high school and college levels. And as a native Staten Islander, I'm a product of the New York City school system at a time when the school system was the best in the nation. Today, it's a joke. People on Staten Island here are afraid to send their kids to public school. They're sending their kids to parochial schools. Not saying that that's a panacea for what's going on, but let's ask ourselves why. The mayor, the Board of Education, including the chancellor, the teachers union, the CSA, the union for supervisors and principals, okay? They all have ideas. None of them are any good. I'm going to tell you right now. If the mayor was really interested in getting this school system back to what it was, okay, he would call upon veteran teachers, 25, 30, 35 years, who had satisfactory performance in the school system, who came up through the civil service ranks in the school system, and tap their ideas, not to fill the Board of Education, the principal's jobs, the assistant principal's jobs with political hacks, because that's what this system is. The teachers union knows it. They won't publicize it. The CSA, they know what they've been a product of. They won't publicize it. Years ago, when a teacher came into this system, they took exams and they were put on lists. And that's why you had high quality teachers. You also had a discipline system in the school where kids learned. And if kids were disruptive in the schools, they were taken out of those schools. Not this suspension stuff, which is just a merry-go-round. Putting kids out on the street for 5 days and then taking them back. And as far as the evaluation that's going on right now, the big controversy between the teachers union, the Board of Education, Governor Cuomo, the mayor, it's a joke. First of all, if you want to evaluate teachers, fine. Who's evaluating the principals? Most of them do not teach any classes.
So how would you encapsulate this into a question?
Okay. Well, if I could just finish one more thing, okay? The teachers who are being evaluated should be evaluated by a committee of people that should go from school to school and not be a part of that school. And they should be evaluating the principals. The principals should teach. There's no reason why they can't teach one class and have the teachers who they are rating unsatisfactory observe them. So my question, ma'am, is this. I want to know if any of these mayoral candidates have the guts to finally do something to bring up our school system the way it used to be. And that is, are they willing to sit down to incorporate veteran teachers and start to clean house with people that are not doing their jobs so that we can hire better teachers, better principals? Are they willing to go back to a civil service exam where people were given jobs in the Board of Education based on merit, not on who they know? Because that's what everyone knows is true, but everybody's afraid to speak up and say it. But I'm saying it right now. And I'd like to see if any of these people, Republican, Democrat, conservative, liberal, no matter who they are, has the guts to do that. And I would appreciate it if you people, if you're doing your interviewing, pose that question to them. One final thing. What are they going to do to raise the math and science? This country's math and science is going down the drain. Listen, I'll tell you something. I give talks for the Space Administration. I'm a volunteer for the Space Administration, NASA. I've been to many, many countries. What we are teaching the kids in math and science in college, kids in those countries are learning in intermediate school and high school. I want to know what the mayoral candidates are going to do to up the curriculum in this city. So you can take my ideas and put it to a question, but let's see which one of these people have the guts to be honest and say, let's clean house with the Board of Education. Thank you.
Sir, before you go,
Yeah.
I have a question I'd like to ask
Sure,
you.
go ahead.
I wondered if you have children of your own and if you've sent them to public schools here in Staten Island.
Absolutely. I'm not a hypocrite. I will tell you right now, I have two grown boys. Both of them went to elementary school, intermediate school, and high school in the New York City school system.
And did you feel that they got the kind of education you wanted them to get, or did you have to augment it with homeschooling or whatever you taught them at home?
Okay, good question. Luckily, they did very well in school. Matter of fact, most of the time they had pretty good instruction, but now, they're not little youngsters. We're going back, and one of them is in their 30s already. And but look, no matter what, there's always good teachers and bad teachers, good cops, bad cops, good firemen, bad firemen. Sometimes I had a few bad apples, but most of the teachers they had were good. But that was quite a while ago.
So basically what you're saying is you think that the quality of people being hired in the school system today are not up to snuff.
No, and again, the reason...
So is that what you're saying?
I'm saying that because, ma'am, the way they're being hired is not the way they were hired back in the 40s, 50s, and 60s when you had a civil service exam. That's why you've got crazy teachers. That's why you got crazy principals. Principals should be taking a principal exam, not these interview tests. I've been on one of those tests. They're as phony as a $3 bill. And I told the people, I was told before I went for an interview who was going to get the job. And I defy anybody to tell me that I'm lying because I was there. And I'm telling you, that's what's wrong with this school system. Let's stop with the politics in education. Politicians don't belong in education. Educators belong in education. And if we're going to do something with this city, get the educators there. Get rid of the politicians.
If I could just ask you one more question.
Sure.
Do you think then that you'd like to see mayoral control changed and go back to the old Board of Ed system where it was an independent from City Hall?
It should be It should be equal mayoral, Board of Education. They should have equal say, but under the condition that the Board of Education should be made up of people. Practically every person in the Board of Education should have been a successful educator. Clean the house and get them out. If it's such a great organization, why don't you go back in your news archives and look at all the scandals that have taken place? All this ridiculous waste of money that goes on. That money never gets filtered down to the kids. Because when you have political hacks in an education system, that's what happens. Why don't you put educators in there? Not that are affiliated with politics, but who take civil service. Bring back the civil service exams. Why don't you ask every one of these mayoral candidates, are you in favor of a civil service exam? If they say no, ask them why.
You know, I don't want to turn it into an interview of you, but Rich Lamb, WCBS. Was there a moment when this civil service thing was dropped? Do you happen to know when it was dropped and why it was dropped and what they told the public?
Yes. It was dropped, I believe, sometime in the mid-'70s, okay? They claimed that they wanted to have a test that made it equal for everyone. So they made an interview test. An interview test. So in other words, we don't give, for example, when I took a license exam, I had to take 5 exams. An education exam, a science education exam, a laboratory exam, a written English exam. No. So what they said is that's discriminatory. It's not discriminatory against anyone. Because when I came into that system, there were whites, there were blacks, there were Hispanics. Everyone that passed that exam, regardless of race or creed or background. So they did an interview. Sure, I can have an interview test. Okay, Joe gets the job. Give him the good questions. And I'm not making this up. This is true, and it's going on right now. Ask yourself, how do teachers get their jobs? How do principals get their jobs? Through merit? Through exams? No, it's the interview test. And ask people in every school, when the Board of Education posts the jobs, they already know who's getting the job. Trust me. And nobody's got the guts. The teachers union, no, they know this is true, but they don't have the guts to say it. So why don't you present it to your mayoral candidates and see if any one of them has got the guts to admit it, and ask them if they could do something about it, what they're going to do about it.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
I have an education-related question that someone sent in. Actually, 3 questions. This is from Asia Ojeda, and she had 3 questions related to education as well. The first is, will teachers be treated as professionals or as criminals the way it's been under Bloomberg? The second is, will schools get more funding for after-school programs, or will more stadiums be built? The third question is, how will a new mayor make sure that more high school students get promoted for their true skills and not with fake 65% passing grades? My mother is a high school teacher, and she gets an incredible pressure from administrators to simply pass students, to bump up graduation rates, and to make Bloomberg look good.
Next question. I'm sure you've got them. Thank you, and do tell us who you are.
My name is Robert DiBiase, and I'm also from Great Kills, Staten Island. And basically a little background here. Staten Island is the only borough without a non-motorized means of getting to the rest of the city. During Hurricane Sandy, the Staten Island Ferry, which currently provides the only pedestrian and bicycle connection with the rest of the city, was not operating for several days, stranding many Staten Islanders and keeping them from getting to work. So my question to a mayoral candidate is, what is your position on providing a bike ped pathway on the Verrazano Bridge? Now, I realize the Verrazano Bridge is an MTA facility, and MTA is a state agency, but nonetheless, a mayor has a bully pulpit. So that's basically.
4 votes on the MTA board.
Okay, even more powerful.
So when you say biped pathway, you mean
Bike ped.
Oh wait, a bike path. Oh, a bike path. All right, I thought you said biped.
No. Bicycle pedestrian pathway.
Gotcha.
This
I thought you meant people standing on 2 feet.
Do you think there are many people who would want to have that?
Absolutely. There are many organizations that, there's the East Coast Greenway that proposes a bicycle pathway from connecting urban areas from Maine all the way to Florida.
Do they exist on the Outer Bridge Crossing and the Goethals?
Pardon?
Are there bike and pedestrian walkways on the Outer Bridge Crossing and the Goethals?
Not on the Outer Bridge. There used to be a bike ped on the Goethals, but they closed it years ago. There is or was one on the Bayonne Bridge.
Do you think that there should be bike and pedestrian paths on all the bridges?
Absolutely. Even the Outer Bridge, if and when they rebuild it, should have a bike ped pathway. By the way, the Goethals Bridge is scheduled to be rebuilt, and it will have a pathway on it, as will the Bayonne Bridge. It will have a better pathway than it currently has. Mm-hmm. So all of the bridges connecting from Staten Island to either New Jersey or New York should have pedestrian options.
And are there safe places for the bike paths to link up on either end?
That's another good question. On the Brooklyn end of the Verrazano, yes, there are. On the Staten Island side, there could be. There's no reason why it couldn't happen. And in fact, there's no reason, given the design of the Verrazano Bridge, that you couldn't put these pathways, in spite of what the MTA has said in the past.
Have you tried to get the MTA to listen to your proposal?
Many times I've been to NEMTEC and have proposed. I've given testimony there at least 2 meetings, and probably will testify there.
And their reaction to it was?
Haven't gotten a reaction yet. There was something in the news about they'd consider another study again. But this has been studied to death. In 1997, the original designers of the bridge did a feasibility study. It was under the auspices of the city planning. And there is no reason why it couldn't be built. I mean, the designers, Ammon and Whitney, they did the design study.
Thank you, sir.
Yep.
Thank you.
In the meantime, I also have a question related to transportation. The question comes from Ayla Tillis, and she says, people who reside on Staten Island are like prisoners. To go anywhere, they have to pay toll fees. Property taxes are up, tolls up. What could be done for Staten Islanders? They deserve the same lifestyle as other New Yorkers.
Other issues or questions? No.
While we're waiting for
Yes.
the next person to come up and ask a question, I actually have a question from one of our viewers who comes from Staten Island and wrote in. This is from Wanda Sanders. She actually has 3 questions. She says, the first, what are you going to do to ensure better protection and housing for the mentally ill? Second question, and what are you going to do to get back the housing vouchers, or will you continue to allow evictions to go on? And question 3, what about the constantly growing number of homeless? Maybe this has provoked some questions in the audience, and someone would come up and want to share something with us.
Any audience members with additional topics or questions, or do we have any more from our home listeners?
I have one, but we don't bite, so you can just go right up to the microphone there. We really want to hear what you're thinking. But we'll hear what this listener or viewer is thinking. It's Charles Plushnick, and this is quite a question here. Why does the city pay architects based on a percentage of the construction cost? There's no incentive for that architect to keep costs down, but there is an incentive for the architect to keep construction costs high. Why not pay them based on deliverables, such as a price for each drawing or bid document? Anybody here want to answer? It's a good question.
It is.
Knowledgeable, not one I would have.
Also probably one that was based on somebody who had an experience with losing property during the Storm Sandy.
Could be, very definitely.
Anybody with Sandy-related issues? that you'd like to have the citywide candidates questioned about? Well, if we've gone through, the issues, well, we've got one more here. Yes, please. That's why we're here.
You already know who I am. There's one thing that really bothers me here, and it's not only a Staten Island issue, it's a all 5 borough issue. We've been reading a lot in the paper, and you've been reporting about the scandal that took place with Vito Lopez and Sheldon Silver. Now, Sheldon Silver took money to defend Lopez. Now I understand that he's got 2 lawsuits. And I understand that our state attorney general is going to allot Mr. Silver money to defend himself, taxpayer money. That is outrageous. This is why the city has the reputation that it does. And I would like you guys to ask each one of those mayoral candidates, right to their face, okay, will you support or be against Silver receiving that money to defend himself? Why do we have, as taxpayers, have to support him? That's the first thing. And secondly, we have one politician on this island who I read in our local newspaper who's calling for Mr. Silver to step down. I give this council lady, she's council lady, credit. I would like the other politicians who are running for mayor to be asked that question. Because the governor who came on as being, I'm going to fight all this political corruption going on, seems to be very quiet on the Silver issue. I would like to see you guys in a debate ask each one, either by a show of hands or ask them personally, one by one, do you support Mr. Silver staying on? Or do you say he should step down? Do you support the Attorney General giving him money to defend a lawsuit that the taxpayers are going to pay for? Are you against that? Be very curious when they're put on the spot. You want good ratings on your debate? Try that one for size.
Last chance. Any other issues? I think we've got another taker.
Okay, this question isn't as well formed as the other one, so I'm sort of thinking off the top of my head here. But city agencies or agencies in either city, state, they all tend to operate in their own little silos, and it's very difficult to get integrated projects. You know, on Staten Island, New York City EDC is always proposing projects, and typically they are insular. They involve a particular spot, and they never do the infrastructure that's necessary to make these projects a success. And time after time after time, this has happened. And in many cases, the project dies on the vine because of the lack of good transportation or whatever. So this question of insular and siloed agencies, how do you get around that? Is there anything that the mayor can do to get more integrated sort of, things done?
Okay, thank you.
Definitely an interesting issue.